This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it's four. I guess we got 1 minute. It's 4 o'clock there. We'll go ahead and get started. Make sure everyone, if you haven't yet, please sign in. All right, could you please call the roll? Here.
Councilor Marujo. Here. Councilor Moore.
Here.
Councilor Chapel. Here. Councilor Arnold. Good.
Okay.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda and the minutes together, maybe?
I make a motion to approve the agenda for the September 17th, 2024 Public Safety Committee meeting, and also the approval of the amendment for July 16th, 2024 for the public safety.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
I missed one.
Yeah, you want to add? I was going to see if you wanted to add a motion for that. Yeah.
Should I amend it now or do it?
You just do another one, no?
Should I amend it or do it?
We're going to do another one.
Yeah, just do.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to consider the minutes for the August 13th, 2024 Public Safety Committee minute as received.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you, everyone. So the first item on the agenda is resolution 2486. Go.
Chair, committee members, staff, 3 properties, condemnation list. First one is 1111 West Stone Street. Property burned at one end. Currently, we have the gentleman, Mr. Arias, in court for the cleanup of the property. And judge, he had court today. Judge gave him 20 days to comply. So that's where we are now.
Have you seen any improvements or have you driven by?
Sorry?
Have you seen any improvements?
No. He also was taken to court for animal control. He has something on them too. 1111 East Summit Street. This property burned also. Have had no contact with the property owner. Next one, 302 and 304 West Wally. This is a duplex and it also burned. You can tell by the pictures it was pretty bad. But they have pulled the permit to start the cleanup and bring it back up to code. The permit is for the roof, fixing the roof and the damages for it. That's all I got for now.
Any questions from the? Anyone have a question? Okay, I'm gonna make a motion.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept resolution adoption of resolution 24-XX that includes the removal or demolition of 3 dilapidated structures.
Second.
And consent?
Oh, to consent, let's do it to consent.
Send them to,
Oh, I thought we just.
with the recommendation of placing them.
Okay, sent to legal with the recommendation of being added to consent.
Okay. Did you second, Carlos?
Yes.
Right.
Chappie.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the ordinance 24XX. Seeking a recommendation to authorize to advertise for a public hearing to consider adopting proposed ordinance 24XX, an ordinance amending the Port of the Raleigh City Code. Mr. Yantuma.
So this is our 4th sitting with this ordinance, so I'll spare you the gory details and get to the only substantive change that's really happened in the past 2 months, and that is a tethering requirement. So it's been a kind of the animal care community more progressive goal to move away from tethering to have more space for animals. So I looked into it. At first I was a little hesitant. I thought maybe I actually have the authority to do this. Santa Fe and Bernalillo County both adopted it. They had similar statutory authorities to the city in that regard. And so what this would do is have a fencing requirement, or if the individual can't afford fencing, there is I guess what you would call It's a baby fence.
A pen or something.
With the pen, or pen, so I pronounce it funny, like pen, like pen. In any case, you'll see in the ordinance, there are different size provisions depending on the animal. So if it's less than 30 pounds, it's 100 square feet, and it moves up. And that's per dog. In any case, the only requirement within that tethering section, Ms. Halbert, you probably can give the page for those reading along.
There are copies up here too, if anybody wants.
The cruelty provision still applies, which so if you injure an animal while it's otherwise big enough, you've now
Page
violated the
73.
ordinance anyway. So, by way of example, if it's 110 degrees out and the dog is in water, that means, I think we all agree, animal cruelty. And so.
There are photos here too, I'm sorry.
and so the city.
You have to see photos of the animals. Yeah, the photos are pretty bad. You'll see some of, and these are from Roswell. Abby took them. And they're just awful.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Hess.
And, yeah, otherwise, that really is the big change. Everything else is the same from the last 2 months, more or less, with some minor corrections, such as adding a quail to the list of poultry one can keep video of.
Yeah.
The little legs are great in soup, especially if you like Japanese food. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer questions, but I think I will say that this is a workable change to the ordinance that fixes some of the problems that we've seen for the past few years. And to paraphrase Voltaire, the perfect should never be the enemy of the good. And so if you guys want to get moving on an improved animal ordinance, this is the way to go. Because like I said, every time we go back and start redrafting things, it's another month where the stuff that really needs to be fixed doesn't get fixed.
And I think the idea, like with the tethering, is it would go to council next month, but it wouldn't take effect immediately. We'd give I guess we would determine, how many days. We're thinking like 120-day
Right.
notice to the public.
And so this is, like I said, this is a criminal provision, and so there's always prosecutorial discretion. But the animal control officer make the call. If a dog's really hurting, he has the right to go in there and save the dog.
Yeah.
Just.
We would give people 120-day notice to say there's no more tethering in the city. And then they would know. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair. So I have a couple questions, Ms. Rankin. So this actually, if we vote for it, it then goes to legal, correct? Okay, so, and then from there, it would go to the council. Do they have to actually advertise for public hearing with this?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got legal, public hearing, actually advertisement, and then public hearing.
3 months.
3 months. At any point in that, it can be amended or changed along the way.
You have 3 more meetings to amend if you read through, constituents reach out to you.
Or changes.
Yep.
Okay, so on the pinning, that clause on page 74 under B, what is Santa Fe? Or it shows it shows the different.
I off the top of my head did not do it. That's I just can't tell you, but Hess might be it. Santa Fe.
Oh,
is
wait
there.
just a moment.
I don't with me. It's similar to this. I believe Santa Fe did allow pens. And speaking of pens, I was thinking that, I was hoping that language allowing pens would not be there. Just because the dogs that I see in town going down the aisle to their pens are just as forgotten about as the chain dogs. And the amount of space that they have, even with this, is very limited. And then if you have a doghouse in that pen, it takes away even more square footage. And most of the time, there's no shade over the pen. Most of the time, there's no water. Most of the time, they're not going to go into that doghouse because there's no shade. They're living in feces because people tend not to clean them up. People are forgotten in the backyard to take the chain dogs. So I was hoping that we would just straight to you either have a fence or you have a leash. And you see the one, you don't have to have a fence. You use a leash, take your dog outside to go potty. bring it back in. So that was my thinking.
Okay, I was just gonna say, really agree with your logic, but that is generally the logic of our people. What, Mr. Eintema, what actually made you think to include the penny?
Oh, that was at the request of the drafting council.
Yeah, to actually include penning, like an alternative to not having a fence.
Go ahead.
No, baby, I have to think, so go ahead.
That's all I heard you say.
I am. Yes, go ahead.
I have a concern about the not allowing the penning either. I think, because not all houses have a fence. I don't have a fence in my front yard, so where I put my dog out. But I do have, do take them out of the leash, but everybody can't afford a fence. But if they could, they would have one. So I think we ought to have some kind of option. Maybe if we add the penny, some kind of requirements that, that it has to be in shade, have to have one. I don't know, but I just think we have to give them more than an option to just to have a fence. Because I don't think that's I don't think that's fair for us to be able to say, you have to have a fence. Everybody doesn't have one. So I just I think if we can think either another way to add some options to the penning or some requirements for the penning or something, but I just don't think we can just say, oh, no, you either have a fence or you have to let your dog out and walk. What if I'm handicapped? I can't go take out my dog. I have to wait for somebody or this, that, and the other. So I've got to think of some other options than just you have to have a fence there. Now, I love my dog and I love animals and all that, but I just think we have to be kind of fair for what our city has. That most of our people don't think like that.
Well, and the
And
reason,
a lot of times you're gonna have them big old fences and you can't even see over, a lot of people now are building those fences that you can't even, see over. So how do you know what's going on in there? Do they climb over the fence so they can see if the dog is tethered back there? How do we know what's really going on? The question is, how are we going to, I don't know, if we're already having trouble in short people, how are we gonna be able to really enforce this?
well, we now have, are we fully staffed with 5? There's 2 in training though, right? So, yeah,
So if I can't have, just because I can't have a fence, I shouldn't have a dog, I think that's out of order.
Madam Council, on page 5, not sure the page is in your packet. That's the general care requirements. And so adequate amounts of water, food, appropriate for the species, of course, size, free of garbage, feces, or debris, insects, and things like that. So there's already these, a separate section that has to do with
The
adequate.
provision says that, just doesn't say anything about shade from what I remember, correct?
Mhm. Yeah, that's something we could throw in really.
yeah, let's do that.
Actually, no, something about adequate shade for direct sunlight, in addition to shelter reference.
Okay, that's
The reason I was okay with the pens is because if somebody has a job and their dog, go out during the day, then they can put it in a pen if they don't have a fence. So I wanted to give them an option to take care of it, but I agree with her.
I can see the option.
In a way, I'm like torn, I'm just stuck in the middle because people do just put them in pens and ignore them too.
Everybody.
But I think that people need an option.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. That's the hard part, because how do we divide between those that we know are doing the right thing, doing it lawfully, and then we drive by and you can take a ride in our trash truck and see what it looks like in the alleys.
Yeah.
Because there are dogs that are completely neglected. So how do we differentiate between those who are?
Well, that's what I was hoping the rest of this ordinance, like he was saying on page 5, would cover it. If you go drive by and you see this dog kennel hasn't been cleaned in like a week, or the dog has no water or proper shade, then we'll get them by this other part of the ordinance.
And I can totally see that, but I think it's a mindset, and I think that mindset is changed by enforcement.
Yeah.
So that's something.
But that's what we got to be sure. That's on you guys. They've got to enforce it. If we're having a problem now where things aren't getting enforced and people are just, yeah. Did you have more questions? No.
As long as we leave the pen part in there, I'm okay. As long as, like you said, they have to be clean, they have to have water, those kind of things. So I'm okay.
I just, Ms. Hess, is there anything else you want to add to it? I mean, you're very passionate about, it, so I understand where you're coming from with the pens and everything else. I got it on my phone, thank you though.
I mean, I'm just hoping to go my way just because I want to change the mindset. You know, a dog should be a part of the family, inside, not on a chain, not in a pen, 24/7, and that is what I see most of the time. And I'd like us to eventually get to a point where the norm is that they're part of someone's family, not just, like I said in the letter, an inexpensive alarm system thrown in a backyard. It's just not a good life for these animals, and I think it's hard to enforce, like Christina was saying, you know, how do you know if that dog has been inside in the past few hours or whatever? Because if animal control goes out there and says, you know, how long has your dog been out there in the pen? They can say, oh, 5 minutes. You know, that's really hard to enforce that.
The downside to what you're saying is it is hard to enforce your values onto someone else. And, because like I said, it's a mindset. And I don't know that enforcement of law and code actually can change that. I think that it starts with generations. And so that is actually what I would absolutely, from here, employ the community groups with working to actually engage our children in animal activities, and because that's where that chain gets broken. Our children, because some people just think it's normal because that's how they're.
Well, they look at the dog as property, not as part of the
I
family.
think that was what, chattel? No, chattel. Yeah, I won't forget that one. So this is a hard rock, but that's why I completely agree with you, but I don't know that law is what's actually going to change the hearts and minds of our people. I think community outreach and, I think we need to enforce this, and I think we need to hold on to that, definitely. Absolutely. But my dog is probably my most prized best friend, and she's with me all the time. But not everybody has that. Not everybody thinks like that. And it's very sad, but we just have to work to really start employing people to be different, but that's hard.
And maybe we'll get there, maybe we'll see what people are doing to their pens, but I think getting the tethering, that's a good thing. Yes, sir, did you have something?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, when you guys speak, please give your name and address. I do apologize.
my name is Mike Albert. My address is 3 Mercedes Court. I'm a retired veterinarian. And I think that if Roswell wants to be an all-American city, if Roswell wants to be proud of our people and our animals and how we treat our animals, if we want to take their welfare in our consideration, then I think we need to take a stand on some of these things. Because if you don't, you're going to be dealing with the water problem we have right now, which was ignored. Nothing happened to do the repairs, to do the maintenance that had to be done. And you want to make people scream, they're screaming about their water bill now. But there's not a choice, it's got to be repaired. And my desire would be to fix this now. It's been going on a long, long time. I've had them come in with log chains grown into their neck. And you've got to take out that much skin all around their neck and pull it back together and do, and that's not every day that you see that, but you don't have to see it every day to remember it, to know how bad that can be. And I think if we want to be a progressive city and we want to do the right thing, then I think we need to take a look at our water situation to see how we got in that condition. And I think the same thing can happen with how we care for animals. And the mindset is very important, but if you've got to make examples of these things and to make rules that we all have to live by, we all have rules we don't like to live by, but that's still something that we have to do. And I just think that we need to, as a city, we need to take a stand on what's acceptable and what's not. And if people have to make choices. If they can't afford to take care of the animal properly, then they shouldn't have them. It's not fair to that animal. So that's what I would say, that I think if we want to be and live up to what we think we are, we have to do something about it.
I agree. Because that's why we're in this situation. People just don't take accountability. I think the mayor,
Yeah, please.
Just for your information on the water system, we have another leak on Montana today. And so that's 3 in a row. I can tell you about what we got there, and I can tell you about fix it, but we just don't know where the money's coming.
That's my whole point, that we need to,
But, I'm gonna tell you, somebody who gets the phone call, because my phone number is published out. Whoever does it, they publish it out, and it's right there. And they start calling. I've had people call me as early as 5:30 in the morning to tell me their crash cam was in the wrong place. And that's fine, but I'll get even. I'm gonna tell you the thing that happens. You get one offense. On the second offense, you put the dog down. And all I'm saying is, and you tell them no more dogs. And that's the only way to make this work, because how many times we've had every group come in here, and, even the best friends or whoever, and what were they doing? Why they didn't pick up more dogs and get more dogs in the shelter? Was because they didn't go get them. And this is almost, there is no way to win this. You can't build a shelter big enough to bring in any dog from the county and somebody and the other dogs in there and put them in the same pen without same heating and cooling. But we can't have the same thing, because if one of them's got parvo, they'll all have it. And you just can't afford to do that. And I think it's, until you get mean, they're not gonna, people won't listen, and you'll be a SOB because you put their dog down. But I don't know that you can keep giving second and third chances. And when you talk about, Rainey, you talk about this, for an awful lot of people in this state, dogs might be treated better than their children. And that's something that you have to see. You meet people from PYFD and let them tell you about what they see going on. And it's almost impossible to take a child away. But I'm just, there's not all good people in here, and we just need to make a decision. If you do it, you get, on your second offense, dog goes away. And
Well, this
on a low list.
this ordinance covers, it's increasing the fines, like for people that are breeding dogs. It's adding the fines for tethering. It's increasing,
And a cruelty conviction leads to an automatic 5-year inability to own animals.
but it all boils down to enforcement.
Mhm.
That's where we've been lacking, and that's what we're working on.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, sir, I wasn't quite clear on what you were in support of. You did mention, and I've seen the collars that have grown into animals' necks, and it's
but
horrible.
whether you want to make ordinances, I'm not sure you can change the laws, but you can change ordinances that you can't have a dog dragging a log chain around.
Well, we were working on that with tethering, so I'm trying to understand what your focus is. What are your thoughts? Are you referring to pinning as well? Pins?
If the pen's big enough, I'm not.
Okay, that's what I was.
But if you put in 100 square foot pen and you put in a dog house that's 3 by 4 or 4 by 5, you've taken half that pen out of it. And that's not very dang big.
Okay.
So I'm not opposed to pinning
Just-
if it's big enough. If it's got to be big enough, and it's got to be under a shelter. We can supply a dog house and you put the dog in there at 115 degrees and you just fried it.
Right.
There's got to be some, and it's a hard decision to make about what's in the benefit for these animals.
Okay, so I think here's where my battle, because having gone through this discussion, 3-4 times now, the part that actually makes me up, because I am a firm believer that if you cannot afford a dog, you should not have one. Okay, but then there's that really soft side of me that recognizes the whole process and what we're talking about is actually killing a whole lot of dogs. For us to get where we're supposed to be in a society with what you guys are envisioning, that means taking out and killing a whole bunch of dogs because this community will fall short. Those dogs will be picked up. Our animal shelter will not be able to manage that and they will all die. So I can't figure out the actual medium where I can stomach this. And
Well, I think part of that is the transfers that they can have. We have other cities and other states who are willing and able to take some of these pets. Now, it's going to cost money to get them in, to get them vaccinated, to get them in good health, to go. And there's got to be a line someplace has to decide whether this is an eligible candidate for that.
Heard of it transferred.
well, that's actually, it's a beautiful solution. However, considering the numbers that we're hearing of animals being put down and people not taking care of their dogs and animals running wild, creating this hard line that you guys are speaking of only makes those numbers larger. And it will be an evolution where we will be putting down animals until this community changes their mindset. So that's
Well,
what,
euthanasia is not the only option that you have.
no, it's not. But
So I mean, I think I see where you're coming from and I understand that. But that's not the only option that's there. These can be transported. We can spend more money to get other resources developed, places to take these dogs. Some of them, if it's a vicious or a mean animal, then yes, he should be put to sleep. There's no room in this world for a vicious animal. They're just not. But some of those animals can be changed, altered, and placed for adoption in areas where they want and need more dogs.
See, and I'm open to that. I know, but Sammy's always having trouble getting enough fosters to save the animals she is now. So what she's talking about, we're gonna have a huge influx, which I expected, or people are just gonna dump them in the county.
There's a lot of these dogs though that are chained up and they are living miserable lives.
Oh, I know.
See them euthanized. Living that way. And I don't think it would be a sudden influx because I don't think the officer's gonna be driving up and down the alleys looking for people that find them. But when somebody calls in and there is a bad situation, this would give them the power to do something about it. Because, I mean, some of these dogs maybe do go inside, but there's a lot of them that are just on that chain 24/7. And so eventually, maybe we could get that remedy. I don't think it would be a sudden influx.
I did want to point out on the penning. So section B on, if you guys, page 74, there's space requirements. So there's 80 square feet of area provided for each dog weighing less than 30 pounds. So if you have an 8x10 pen and you throw in a huge doghouse, well, guess what? You're violating that because the doghouse is taking up the space. So, and then it's 100 square feet for each dog between 30 and 59, 120 square feet for each dog weighing over 60 pounds, and 25 square feet for a cat. So there's items in here per animal. Yeah.
We can change that too, make it bigger. Like I have one here that's 100 square feet per dog, no matter what size it is. I mean, we can make it whatever we wanted it to be.
Yeah, but there's items in here that if somebody does have a pen, there are things in here to protect them, not just the square footage, but the care and the treatment of the animal. So there's items and there's provisions in here to take care of that.
Madam Chair, that actually does make sense in that, but if you'll excuse me, I'm sorry, sir. Are you a code enforcement officer or, okay, I'm trying, because I would love to hear from the actual people on the streets. Do we have anyone?
Got the coroner officer and the kennel man, or the director for animal services.
Because that's the thing about making laws for other people. I'm not the one that enforces them. And the practical reality of enforcement is something that I can't fathom. I would like to be hearing from the people who actually enforce these and actually how applicable and easy they are to enforce.
I agree on it depend if there is space and an officer can tell if there's space for the animal to run around in, enough space for food, water to be out there, shade over it. You can tell if the dog's been in a kennel for too long.
Right.
So I think there can be enforcement, and I agree that not everybody can afford a fence. My fence is broken right now. I can't afford to fix it.
I got a dog who's too lazy to acknowledge that it's broken, so he doesn't even notice. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we've been looking at this for a long time, and we've added the things that we felt that were going to enhance it and make it more, have more teeth in it. And so I like the things that are added. I'm okay with the pinning. I understand that I kind of feel like her that there's going to be a lot of more youth in it, but and until it hurts you, it doesn't matter. So they'll start feeling it when it starts hurting them. And so then more people start paying attention because I kill your dog, you're gonna get on Facebook and tell everybody that the city took your dog, and it'll get out. You do it once or twice, it'll get out. But like I said, we just have to enforce it. If you're gonna say one time, second time no dog, then we gotta do one time. And it can't be, okay, because this is Bob's friend, I'm gonna let you keep the dog, you just gotta, take him in the house for a couple, or whatever. No, if the rule is one time and done, then the rule has to be one time and done for everybody. And we have to follow through with it. Or it's gonna be painful and it's gonna be difficult for the people where they're gonna put them down. But it has, if that's what we're gonna do, that's what has to be done. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So I just think that we're worked on this. We added those things. We added some tethering things that people wanted. I think let's get it done and move on and get in. The longer we keep holding and moving to the next, we'll never get it enforced. And if we find once we get it started that that's not strong enough, who says we can't come back and amend and add a block that said no pen? You know what I mean? If you start seeing that everybody's in the pen and 20 dogs is in there, then you know what I mean? Then we can change it. But I feel like we got enough to get started and get sent on. And then when you see something don't work, that's what's good about an amendment. Bring it back and add, see this isn't working and change it, right?
3 more months before we get it out there.
Yeah, if we don't get. I agree with you 100%. I've been working on this since I've been in town. Yeah, but I do agree with you. Somebody puts their dog down because, they've been cruel or something. Let them post on Facebook. I want more people to see, hey, they're enforcing the laws now. You better go get your dog fixed. You better stop breeding. You better get them vaccinated. I want people to see that.
That's what I'm saying. That's the only way we'll get it. That's how I get a mindset change,
Yeah.
what she said.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chapman.
I think that Mr. Eichmann hit the nail on the head where we need good, not perfect. Perfect, we're never going to get this. We're never gonna be able to please everyone. Is this a step in the right direction? And Councilor Boris, made a very good point where we can always go back and amend the ordinance, but if we continue to refine this until one person thinks it's perfect, I don't think we're going to get anywhere.
Any more discussion? Okay, I'll take a motion. I'll be happy to see this pass.
Make a
No
motion.
hands.
Are we ready? I'll make a motion to send the ordinance 24X to consider recommendation to advertise for public hearing for the adopting of the proposed ordinance 24XX, an ordinance amending chapter 4 of the Roswell City Code as amended. Send this to legal, right? We're going to send this to legal.
Second.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. It's like a 3-year project here.
The legal committee.
The problem is nobody's listened. In all these years, nobody's really listened to what the situation with these animals are.
That's why I want to make them accountable now.
Yeah.
It's just, they've got to be accountable. And it's not like I just want to go start ticketing everybody, but these people have been doing this. That's why we're in the situation we are with so many animals.
How's our municipal support on that? Municipal court support? Do they actually?
He said he will be fair.
Ms. Hess,
She laughed about that. Why do you say that?
We talked last night.
I hope you'll show up and have conversations with our municipal court. Okay.
Because now, for those of you that aren't aware, we are now collecting stats on how many citations each animal control officer cites, how many the city actually takes to court and how many the court actually prosecutes.
Put these up in the court.
That's
Yeah.
a great idea. Let's show them to him.
Yes, pull them.
Okay, moving on. The lead program. Arnold.
Okay, very exciting news. You can see that. I'm ready. So, very exciting news. We've had discussions with our police department, with our fire department, as far as creating a lead program. Our Deputy Chief Aldana and Hugo Gonzalez and a gentleman named Kevin Perry have found a program out of Colorado Springs. It's called the Crisis Response Team. And we will be traveling to Colorado Springs next week for this program to do ride-alongs. It is a response team that supports our fire department. It's made up of the fire department. It's kind of like a SWAT team or a K-9 unit, officers from fire department, police department. Will work with people trained in crisis intervention to assist in domestic violence, suicide cases, homeless instances, but just basically trained to handle crisis and actually create more of a mechanism of instead of just straight arresting, more of a mechanism where we try to find solutions to that immediate instead of filling our county jails. So we're going up to tour that next, the 24th and 25th, to see if it's something that we can acclimate to Chaves County. Because, Colorado Springs is probably around 250,000 people, so we'll have to be a little bit different. But the goal is to get our professionals up there to see what we can build here and create that crisis response team and try to handle our social issues a little differently than just jail or so that I'm very excited. This is something that Commissioner Dara Dana and I have been looking at for 2.5 years now. And so this first step, I'm actually excited to go to Colorado Springs because we're going up there and then doing the tour and driving right back. But I'm very excited that this is a huge step and that our officers and fire department and dispatch will be a huge part of it as well. So this is exciting. Cool. Deb? Yes.
Just a second, because you were saying that you guys are doing reports now on how many citations have been given.
Yeah, we'll cover that when we do the report from animal control. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. All right, the fire prevention program.
So my name is Jared Olive. I'm the fire marshal for the City of Roswell Fire Department. I was actually asked to give a little presentation by Councilor Arnold. We had a discussion that we had received a number of complaints that people were not real happy with the ordinances and stuff that we were imposing on some people. And they didn't really I think we're in the same category as what we're talking about with the animal control here, that there's just a lack of understanding and it's a mindset that we have to get changed. So the only way we can do that is through education and public awareness, right? So this is my first attempt to kind of get you guys all brought up to speed on what the services that we're providing to the community are and some of the things that we need to do to get better at it and to really spread awareness. I really think that it's important for you guys as our leaders to be able to, have support of this program. You guys really need to understand where it comes from. So I put this presentation together and did it in a hurry, did this in my own personal time at home with my family. So bear with me on it. I've never had to present it yet, but I know for a fact that you guys are going to leave here with plenty of information that you guys didn't have before you came in here. So if you don't mind, I'll get right into it. And here's what our objectives are. We're trying to educate participants on the history of fire prevention and its critical role in today's standards. It plays, just so much importance in what has happened in the past is affecting us now, and how do we keep from having those same hazards or incidents that we've, had in the past. So that's why we're going to focus a lot on the history portion, and that's going to be for you, Matt. I know you like the history. And then part two is going to be the functions and services that we provide here locally. And that's also very critical. Part three is things that we can do that we need to improve on to do better and, in order to progress in the future. So we'll talk about that at the very end. But let's go ahead and get started on this. So since its discovery, fire has been a vital part of humankind's existence and survival. Fire and heat are still a critical component of everyday life, whether it's for cooking our food, powering our combustion engine vehicles, or keeping us warm. There's no getting rid of the need for fire anytime soon. With its benefits comes a high level of danger. Years of experience, incidents, tragedies, and education has helped evolve how people handle, control, and prevent, contain, and provide safe conditions with fire. Agencies such as the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, the International Code Council, ICC, Underwriters Laboratories, as well as many others, have been monumental in the development of codes and regulations that limit the devastating effect that fire potentially creates. This is actually a photograph of our NFPA codes at my office. We're missing one. I think Matt has my other book, but these are really thick, large, just ordinance-driven books that we're expected to, really learn and know. The National Fire Protection Association, they write the codes and standards and best practices on how to safely and effectively implement and operate multiple topics like firefighting, building construction, all types of installation, and much more. So there's tons of stuff that they're involved in, and they're really a group of an organization that comes up with the best practices on pretty much everything in everyday life. So all the way from construction to the way we perform firefighting tactics. So even as far as like coffee makers, how they're designed, everything about them. So they have a huge role in how we actually regulate. But they really are primarily a standard that we use. So they set the standard for everything. The next slide, please. This one here is the fire codes that we use to actually enforce those standards. So this is the International Code Council, similar process. Everybody's coming together, committees are built, and they write the actual laws on all of these topics. So we've got the fire code, which is here. We have International Building Code, International Residential Code, and then we've got plumbing, mechanical, electrical, and so on. The state, they established the minimum requirements, and so they would adopt this particular book, which is International Code Council 2015. And then, of course, our local municipalities would adopt and amend for local ordinances. So the local municipalities adopt the minimum or more stringent codes, but never less. We always have to go based off of what the state dictates. Next slide, please. Why codes and enforcement matter. So just like we're talking about with our animal control, we really can't get anywhere unless we have strong enforcement. But what is the goal of the enforcement of this fire code? The main thing is the preservation of health and life within the community. I think we can all agree that that's of most importance, right? We want to protect life and health. So nobody can argue with that. The next thing is conservation of property and resources. That's something that obviously we all can agree on. We want that to be protected. But I would think on a governmental level that has a little bit more importance, because how many buildings have we presented, Toby, that have been burnt down that are now the responsibility of the city to have to manage and do something with? That's a cost that we are taking on. Whereas if we could prevent that from ever happening, that's just money that we're able to allocate to something else. So the next thing is liability, both financially and criminally. I think that's something that really nobody considers, that, there is going to be a liability effect here, and it's probably going to fall upon the city. So if we're not doing things, we're not managing our businesses and holding them accountable to these codes, it's going to come back indirectly with us. And there's certain instances right now, there's Oakland is going through it. They have the Ghost Ship Fire. Their fire marshal's going through prosecution right now because of negligence. So they knew that this building was a hazard and they didn't take any action. So they're going to be criminally liable. The city itself is going to be criminally liable. Plus the financial liability that's could be accrued as well. I put this little note in here. I coined this term. I tried looking it up and I couldn't find any actual legal substance to it, but citizens expect an implied level of safety. And, you know, if they're going to walk into any of our stores, Walmart or Target, they're expecting to be safe, right? They're expecting that there's not going to be a tragic incident. They're expecting to walk in there, perform their shopping, and get out. So if we're not holding these stores accountable and making sure that we're enforcing those standards, we are going to be held liable, because it is actually, I found less specific ones where they're actually saying that if you don't provide adequate lighting in your businesses and somebody gets attacked, the city can be held liable because you didn't enforce that business had appropriate lighting or security or, you know, just tons of stuff. So there is an implied level of safety that people expect. And I think it's important that we have somebody that's going around enforcing that stuff. And that's going to be my group. So the next slide is going to show, this is going to be the very, very beginning of basically where fire codes originated from. It goes back as far as 64 AD. And this is the Great Fire of Rome. And they said the contributing factors: narrow streets, tall buildings, combustible building materials, and common walled buildings. What did they do? They changed wider street, restriction on heights of houses, no common walls, and they constructed with fire-resistant materials such as stone and wooden pillars, or stone instead of wooden pillars. Next slide. This is the first American Fire Ordinance back in 1631, became the first American building code, all based on fire. So I think a lot of people would probably assume their building code was actually originated based on building standards first, and fire code would branch off of it, but it's the opposite. So the fire code was established as the first building code. Go ahead. First American fire wardens were in 1648. The first fire prevention inspectors were allowed to inspect every home in the city, and they could issue fines to homeowners. Next one. Great Fire of London, 1666. Approximately 80% of the city was affected. So that's, I mean, all of these incidents, we're talking about major catastrophic incidents. Next slide, please. After a large fire in Boston, the first paid firefighters were instituted in Massachusetts, and there was, did I say that? I don't know how many had in there originally, but there's over 400,000 paid firefighters today. Okay. December 7th, 1736 was the first Union Fire Company established in Philadelphia by Benjamin Franklin. They used strong bags, baskets, and more commonly leather buckets, coined the phrase the Bucket Brigade. Homeowners were required to provide a bucket on their doorstep for the first arriving volunteers to use. So they were still, you know, they're enforcing these things on the public all the way back in 1736 to have their own fire protection equipment. Next slide, please. This is Great Chicago Fire. 250 people dead, destroyed 1/3 of Chicago's buildings. Fire and building codes in place for new spacing and construction materials required to be used for reconstruction. The first week of October, as National Fire Prevention Week, marks the anniversary of this fire. So next month, we're going to be performing our own Fire Prevention Week. That's where we go out to all of our schools and we give educations to all the little kids, and we give them, you know, the hats and all the materials and everything like that. So we'll be doing that next month, and we'll also be giving stuff out at the fair and doing education there too. Next slide, please. Boston Fire here. This is most buildings in Boston, Massachusetts were thought to be fireproof. Poor water supply and fire hydrants and inadequate fire hose streams only allowed water to reach the third story of 5 to 7-story buildings. So I think it's funny that, you know, we've gotten hundreds of years of fire prevention and stuff that we've implemented at this point. They are considering their buildings fireproof. And they're still coming across instances where they just neglected, they overlooked things, right? They didn't consider that their fire departments could not actually extinguish fires that were on buildings that were 5 to 7 stories and stuff like that. And they didn't consider that they had the correct amount of water for these buildings. So obviously things are progressing, but they're still just not quite there yet. I'll tell you a funny story. I was actually at one of our schools doing an inspection, and the principal, she was not real happy with the inspection that we were doing. She told me, she said, "I don't know why you're caring so much. This is a brick building. It's not going to catch on fire." She said, it's fireproof. Okay, well, I explained to her, obviously, calmly, like what some of the factors were that, you know, are going to catch fire, but it's just the same mentality, you know, you can tell. Move on, please, Mike. Early on, we got 1,600 firefighters from 30 different cities responded. Not a standard fire hose coupling size, and their couplings did not match other departments' hoses. So even though they had tons of personnel show up, their hoses would not hook up to the other fire department's trucks, so they basically were of no use. I'll show you some more instances here locally. In fact, I just had one 2 weeks ago at our new surgical center. They installed fire department connections with the wrong type of hoses. So we were able to catch it before they're opened up, but it's just these things that are still repeating itself. And if we don't have this enforcement, you know, bad things are going to happen. So go ahead. Well, I was going to tell you too that this is the year that the sprinkler systems, automatic sprinkler systems, were invented, around the same time frame. Chicago Theater Fire. This one, they really went out on a limb and said that the building itself was absolutely fireproof, and they advertised that to the public when they were selling tickets. So this is a flyer that they had printed out, and with the description of it being absolutely fireproof. Tons of issues with this, killed tons of people, and one of the issues was an unfamiliar locking device, so people couldn't leave. So some simple things as much as our locks that we're putting on these doors are causing people to die in these buildings. So go ahead, Mike. Other main exits open against the flow of traffic, so you guys can recognize that we make everything open in the flow of traffic at certain size buildings. Dead-end corridors and obstructed exits cause panic, pushing, jumping, and rushing for exits. Is known as the deadliest single building fire in the history of the United States. Many patrons' bodies being overcome by heat, fire, smoke, asphyxiation, and crust injuries were piled up against these gates in the foyer. Over 600 death toll. This fire created federal and state standards for exiting pathways, exit doors, exit signs and markings, maximum seating, and the use of the panic bar. Triangle Waistcoat Fire in 1911. Says 500 workers, mostly women. Saturday, March 25th, 1911, fire started from a scrap bin under one of the cutter's tables on the 8th floor from what the fire marshal believed was an unextinguished match or cigarette. No fire alarm system or any other audible alarm was available in this building. Go ahead, Mike. The fire escape was flimsy and poorly anchored and broke. Workers began to jump from windows, the fire escapes, and even pried open the elevator doors and jumped down the elevator shaft. Had no ladders that reached beyond the 6th floor for the fire department. Ringling Brothers Circus, 1944. Tent was 520 feet long, world's largest circus tent. No fire extinguishers, and the nearest fire hydrant was 900 feet away. All of these codes, or these items they're mentioning, have all been addressed in our current codes. So these are all certain things that we're going to be looking for on new developments, or even as simple as circuses coming in. So guests fled for the exits as flaming pieces of canvas dropped onto them. 2 exits were blocked. Bodies were piled 4 to 5 bodies high. Over 100 children and 69 adults were killed. Code changes, NFPA standard 102 was developed for grandstands, folding, and telescopic seating, tents, membrane structures. So certain things this is just important to know that our codes go back this early on. This code is also reflected in the 2000 International Building Code and 2003 NFPA 5000. This one was an important one, I felt like, to me, because one, it's a school, and these things are still similar to what we have. The schools haven't changed that terribly much. We're still packing these buildings full. We're still relying on other people to watch over our children. And you still have people like the principal that told me the building was fireproof and the building wasn't going to burn. So it's still just I just want to reiterate that this stuff is still prevalent. Even though this happened in 1958, it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen just 60, 70 years later than we are today. So 1,300 students, due to the grandfather clause, school did not have an automatic fire alarm system or sprinkler system. Building did have a manual fire alarm pull station, but only had 2 pull stations. And 4 extinguishers in the north wing of the school were mounted over 7 feet off the ground. So, that's pretty high for even a grown adult. And obviously a child could not be expected to utilize one. Single fire escape from 2nd floor required passing through the main corridor to reach. So even though it had some of this fire protection equipment, it just wasn't well set up, and whoever implemented or designed it just didn't have a good idea of what they were doing. The windows from the 2nd floor were 25 feet off the ground due to unusually high 12-foot ceilings. Fire spread through the main corridor on the 2nd floor, making it impossible to get to the fire escape. Students unable to escape the fire escape pushed and pulled to get to the 25-foot jumped. Go ahead. See if you can get that to play, Mike. Let's click on that video there for us.
Control click. Control click.
I think maybe.
And I don't do it with the lines on
Maybe if you can select off of it. Select off of the mic.
Now control click. Control click the picture. There you go. There you go. You see this?
This woman was a student during this incident.
Remember, a will to live kicking in. I remember a rush of adrenaline. I was this aggressive, ferocious animal that had to get oxygen and had to get out of that room. I could feel my skin burning. I could feel the nylon of my stockings melting into my flesh. And I knew at that point that I wasn't going to be rescued. It was useless to just yell for help and cry and scream. And if I was going to get out of there, I had to get on my own. So I literally clawed my way through the people that were still in front of me at the window. I remember stepping over bodies on the floor to do it. Sat that windowsill with me, and she helped me up to the windowsill. Fell all the way down against the bricks. And I landed in a heap on the concrete on my hip.
If what she said at that very end fell, she landed on a heap. She meant a heap of other bodies, and that's why she was able to survive the fall. So just, that really, I think it has a huge impact. knowing that there's more to what we're doing about preventing hazards to both life and health. You know, she has to deal with this for the rest of her life. And we found that with all of our fire victims, that this is a recurring thing. They don't really get over it. She might have survived, but at what cost? You know, she's still having to deal with the guilt, the survivor's guilt. She goes in and talks about that more. Obviously, we don't have time to go through the whole interview, but there's tons of other interviews where, you know, siblings were lost. One made it out, one didn't. They had each other's hand until the very end. So terrible, terrible things that we want to really avoid. And that's why it's very important. Let's go ahead and move on. 92 children and 3 nuns perished in the fire. Code changes due to the grandfathering clause. Our Lady of the Angel School did not have to comply with all the new fire codes and standards that the newly constructed schools were required to comply with. They overhauled some of those and made certain schools have to retrofit, but still those grandfather clauses are still in place for a lot of things. Requirement of fire alarms and automatic sprinkler systems, self-closing exit doors, and opening outward window egress height, 1 hour fire resistance rated walls, dedicated emergency lighting, separation of heating devices, and fire doors at stairwells were all implemented due to this one building. Station nightclub fire, this is a huge one. This is as recent as 2003. Building not equipped with a sprinkler system due to an overlooked code requirement when the building changed occupancies, which required a sprinkler system to be installed as it no longer met the code exception. I think this one's really applicable for our today's standards because we're going through with a lot of these buildings that were, you know, met a certain usage at the time of construction, but now a new owner has bought them and the usage has changed. The usage now requires that this building had a sprinkler system. And this is an exact reason why, because hundreds of people died in this building. But you're going to find that business owners are not real happy with that when they find that a business was operating for the last 20, 30 years without this system. They own it. We come in and say, no, you have to have this. They don't know why, of course. They just think that we're picking on them. And that's when you guys receive a phone call. So it's just good to know that there's reasoning for all of this. Excellent, Mike. This is a bunch of the people. This is the band that was making it out the back as the fire was going, and this is out the front where all the people rushed to get out. They actually stacked up and filled that entire doorway and couldn't get out, so they bottlenecked that whole thing. No emergency lightings within the building. Most people rushed to the main front door because that's what you know. Fire engulfed the nightclub within 3 minutes. 100 people died and 230 injured. A new standard requires sprinkler systems in new clubs with 50 or more occupants and existing clubs with 100 or more occupant load. Sprinklers required by 7/1 of 2005, meaning that they actually had to retrofit all of those buildings. So they gave them a little bit of time to get that done, and then eliminated the grandfather clause, allowed fire authority to inspect and close any clubs that violated fire code. This is the summary here. Fire code officials work to ensure the buildings are properly protected, exits are properly accessible, extinguishing systems and alarm systems are functioning properly, and all systems and services within the facilities are properly maintained in order to ensure the buildings are as safe as possible for all occupancies. Tragedies can be avoided when property owners and code enforcement officials work together. It takes people changing their perspective regarding fire safety in order to avoid being a statistic in one of these catastrophic fire events. So it's exactly like what we were talking about for the animal control. We really need to get people to change their mindset in order to make a difference on this. It's been this way for 20 years. It's not an excuse for deficiencies. It could save lives and property when corrected. In the end, the fire service goals are to preserve lives and property. So this is where we get to our local services, and I just kind of wanted to show some photos. To be honest, I don't go around taking photos myself doing my job. That's pretty uncommon. So these are just random photos that I found. And, you know, there's quite a bit to take in here. I've got, this is where we were at Dean Baldwin, one of their fire protection systems, and I was actually instructing their new guys on how to correct and maintain those. This fire alarm panel was a brand new install where they didn't wire it correctly. So it was important for me to be able to recognize that and get them to fix it and make sure that it was done correctly. This is a new renovation on one of our properties. They thought it was a good idea to store their propane and their gas for all of their heaters throughout the building inside. The fire code doesn't allow for any storage of any propane tanks. If they just had one of those, it would have been violating the code. But this is a new construction, just happened last year, and every one of these throughout every hallway had 2 cylinders, one connected to a heater and one stationed there just as standby. So this whole building would have just been a complete bomb in a residential area. This here is just me testing new construction, testing their sprinkler systems. This is out of the airport flammable liquids that we're testing, and then this is an investigation on improper use of destroying their fire or their airplanes, and they caught fire. Next one. This is code enforcement. So we inspect over 2,000 buildings and facilities for fire and life safety code hazards and construction standards. Our job is to interpret and understand safety standards, state and federal rules and regulations, and city ordinance, and share that information with the public. So the reason I put this photo up here is we actually had a requirement. Well, it's been in the codes that we have all food trucks have to have a suppression system over their cooking appliances. This is a pretty good example of what it should look like. They have food suppression systems over all of their commercial cooking appliances. This is one of our food trucks that came through with a hood built in Mexico, customized. And we actually released all this information to the public before. And so all the public was aware that we needed sprinklers in their food truck. I guess I wasn't clear when I said sprinklers and not hood suppression being 2 totally different things. This guy actually put Rainbird sprinkler heads in PVC piping, and he had a disconnect so he could, or an activation switch over here over my shoulder where he could turn it on and the pop-up sprinkler heads would come down.
A for effort.
Yeah, I really had to
Patience.
I had to be very nice to him where I educated him. That's not quite exactly what we're looking for, but it was.
You thought that was crazy. Why don't you sprinklers?
But they're pulling really well. And then finally, we were actively involved in the code adoption process. This photo of me at the Fire Marshal Conference where we actually we play a big role in the development of new codes and standards and throughout the state and figure out what the state's going to implement. Code enforcement continued. We processed over 75 permits annually, plan reviews over 100 plans a year, and we're working directly with code enforcement and the Building Development Center. We collaborate with architects. We ensure, like I said, even though some of these designers, they know that they need this fire protection equipment, their mindset isn't really aligned with us who are out in the field and we actually get to see this stuff. So maybe they put a stairwell on the wrong side. Maybe they didn't put their fire protection equipment in the right places. So we do a lot of consulting with all of those people. The other thing that we're doing is conducting performance and acceptance tests for fire safety equipment and systems installation. Which I don't know, I didn't put a picture in there, but basically we do everything from underground plumbing, fire pump testing, fire alarms. That's where I caught that first alarm panel. So we're testing and making sure that all of this equipment that is required to be installed, that it's installed correctly. And I think a lot of people take for granted the fact that, we're there and we might pass or fail a system and it might cause that business to be, prolonged and opening and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's an owner who is paying a contractor money to put in this equipment that he knows he needs. He may not know why he needs it, but he knows he needs it. So he pays a contractor to do it. But do they do it correctly? And it's our job to make sure that they're actually installing what they're supposed to be and that it functions properly. And you wouldn't believe how many times these things are really hanging up businesses and they blame us because we're keeping them from opening their doors, we're keeping them from making money, but at the same time, we're really protecting their assets. they paid this company to do a job. We're making sure that they do that job correctly. So, I'd hope that if you guys do receive some of those calls, that you guys are knowing that Jared's not just doing it just to be a jerk. He's keeping these things held up in that process because there's something that's wrong or was done incorrectly, and you're going to get the most bang for your buck once it's actually done. So I could have accepted that FDC connection at the surgical center and said, yeah, they installed that pipe. It looks good, but it wouldn't have matched our code, or it wouldn't have matched our fittings. So when that building caught fire and we couldn't put it out, why did you pay that guy all that money for? It's pretty critical that they're doing them correctly, and you wouldn't believe how many people are not. So now moving on to fire investigations, we coordinate investigations of arson, explosions, and hazardous materials and fire incidents. We collect and submit evidence for laboratory analysis, prepare reports on investigation findings, and we conduct fire testing through burn cells. So obviously here we're just collecting footprints of a person suspected of arson leaving a fire scene. Here we got some examples of us performing testing that we found some items on a fire scene, and now we have to go back and test those to make sure that they're prevalent for what our theories are on how that fire started. Next one. This one is works with multiple agencies on large scale fires, including ATF, FBI, and insurance investigators. We're involved in the prosecution of arsons and criminal related fire incidents, interviews, interrogations, and courtroom testimonies. We build and develop training criteria for deputies and fire recruits, and we participate on the board of directors for multiple associations directly involved in standards development. So this would be a separate one from the previous photo where I was on the Fire Marshals Committee. This is actually the International Association of Fire Investigators that I'm referring to on this one. Here's a training of our recruits, and then of course me on the fire scene documenting that destroyed building. Public education, school presentations every year. We do every single school throughout the community, and even do the private schools as well. We're involved in the fair, and then we have other different programs that we're trying to implement, like smoke detector programs. This particular one, we had the American Red Cross and the state fire marshals involved, and we were able to distribute, I think it was over 200 smoke detectors to a high hazard community, which we consider as actually older person's community, and everybody was just enthralled with the outcome. It was just excellent. We're just giving the presentation of the kids down there. This next one, I just want to show a picture of our building. It's a great facility that we need. We have an arson investigations trailer in there. We have evidence lockup in there. We also have our plan reviews and an archive of all of our plan reviews in there. But I also want to point out too that this thing takes maintenance. We are expected to perform all maintenance here, and this particular photo was taken about 7 o'clock in the evening after I'd replaced about 5 sprinklers and trimmed the yard up, and really invested a lot of my own time to be here and make sure that this thing is correct. So the next slide, please. So basically, that was kind of the introduction into the rollover into my next part 3 series. Basically, what can we do to do better? And I think that some of the things we've already talked about, more public awareness and education is critical, and making sure that the people understand why we're doing these things, not just being jerks and being the city and trying to enforce things on these people or over govern, if you will. We're really trying to protect them. I think that's a critical component. But unfortunately, that's the program that we're in. There's only 3 of us that are expected to do that job, and it's asking a lot. I think we're stretched really thin. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but all those photos, I feel like you could see that there is a wide, broad range of responsibilities that we have, and have 3 guys that are in charge of that throughout this whole city and maintaining that throughout the city, asking a lot. So, I've already spoken with Chad, and I think we're all on board that we know that we recognize that there's a need. I think we're all in this room as like-minded individuals. We recognize the need. It's just making it happen. And so, I would hope that if you guys have the ability and believe the same that I do, that maybe that's something that we can look forward to and work towards getting our program developed. These other standards that I'm addressing on here, not a lot of context to them, but basically the NFPA and other standards are being generated that are requiring more of us. So the next edition that's coming out, I think it's going to be implemented next month. They're actually requiring 2 investigators on every fire scene. There's requirements on what their fire investigation units actually have that are additional funding that we're going to have to, get and make sure that our equipment is up to these standards. So within a month, we're going to be expected to really raise the stakes on how we operate. And that's just on the investigations alone. That doesn't consider the fact that, our buildings are developing at an outrageous rate. I mean, we can't keep up. And we want to be involved in all of these things, and we really need to be. Every new project has their hiccups that we're able to identify. And if we get to the point where we can't inspect these things regularly, then we're going to lose a lot. And that just increases the rate or the chances of us being a statistic or one of these people that we just seen in the history books on one of these big incidents. So I think that we really need to get more personnel in order to progress to where we need to be. There's other communities that are running just investigations programs separately from their inspectors, which I think would be a good idea that we could, work towards. Those investigators have the ability to do a lot more, whereas we're relying on PD to go through the rest of the prosecution on a lot of our fire arson cases, which they're overwhelmed as it is. Asking them to help us out with our cases is kind of, counterintuitive on that. The other thing is, you saw how elaborate some of those fire protection equipment can be. That's asking a lot of our guys to be able to, understand and know these systems to the point to where we can catch where an installer did something correctly. A lot of times those fire marshals would expect an installer to know their job better than we would know their job. You would hope that they would, but at the end of the day, we would be missing a lot. So let's just move on real quick through these. I also didn't mention that there's other responsibilities that I have just within my own organization of personnel supervision, training, equipment maintenance, station maintenance, meetings like this, and then purchasing and other items as well. So really stretched. That was what I already talked about with the investigation units. And then this is just some statistics that we found from the New Mexico inference reporting software. There were over 10,112 fires reported in New Mexico in 2020, 20 civilian deaths, 41 reported injuries, 29 civilian and 12 fire personnel, 21,705,725 property damage just in that 1 year alone. So we're seeing that this stuff is very prevalent, even though all of that history that we've had, all of the experience and everything that we've learned, still obviously in 2020, we're still having tons of fires. So that's pretty much it. I really want to thank you guys for the time. Thank you for hearing me out. And hopefully, like I said, you guys learned something that you didn't know.
No, that was great. You did a really good job. Thank you.
I always have some.
Is this building grandfathered in? Because there's no.
Exactly, yeah.
There is no grandfather.
So how do you check sprinkler systems because you can't set them off?
Well, they actually have testing equipment that they flow. So on the outside of all sprinkler buildings, they actually have inspectors test valves, and they can actually release and open up the system, flow water. They can measure what the pressure is in the gallons per minute and make sure that it's adequate.
Because I know you can't set them off. Yes.
So first, thank you very much. That was kind of a lot of the thing, is having discussions and knowing that that some growth is definitely required for our fire marshal department. I understand funding is a huge thing. I'm quite confident there are grants, especially since you have the request of expansion and requirements to have additional there. I think we need to focus and support as counselors to help get those grants and bring that funding in so that you can expand, because you have new requirements. Plus, I believe there is going to be economic growth that is going to be difficult for you to keep up with the building permits. I will ask Mr. Cole, we did manage to get that system software program put in for permitting and building.
It's in the process right now.
Okay, because that is, I think that's a huge CYA, and this has always been my viewpoint with that program. Logging, when you have these businesses who are not actually coming to you or hiring consultants who do not come to you first, and then afterwards you have to undo it. We need that logged in. We need notations of that, basically the CYA or whatever. So that's why that system is, I think, going to be a lifesaver for the city, because granted it is a little more work and for you, it's still very difficult when you have one group saying this and the other saying this, but nothing documented. And so the city has now created the opportunity to log what we've done, what we've checked, and even if there is a huge fire, then you have backup in what the city has done. Documentation is key at all times.
Yes.
But I am a huge advocate for you guys getting additional people. I do like the idea of having plans and concepts and goals to creating a separate investigation division and focusing and allowing that to grow. Because especially if we have ideas of possibilities of growth for Roswell, you need the support so that it can naturally flow. Also, education. I don't know if we have this, but in our permitting process, I don't know if there's like a trifold or whatever of like 6 key points that your fire marshal is going to be looking at. I don't know if you have something like that, but if you give that to them in the get-go, okay, a little, basically here, this comes with your building permit. This is what our fire marshal is going to require of you. If you have, I'm sorry, but if you have installed out, whatever they are, that don't match what would be on the fire truck, it makes no sense. But there is another CYA on behalf of the city. If you provide them with a trifold of these are what we're looking at, and if you miss the boat, it's definitely on you because we pre-warned you and we've logged it all.
Yep.
So
it's absolutely something that we've implemented, especially on the more specific items like food trucks. That's a lot more manageable. Kind of hard to create a pamphlet that would cover that entire book's worth of, things
right.
for a surgical center or a big high-rise building or something like that. You'd have a much larger trifold, but for the food trucks, tent requirements, stuff like that, we absolutely.
You can keep it pointed, but giving them your phone number ahead of time, making it known that you're accessible, that's what wards off well, you never talk to us. And because I've heard what they say when they're combating you. I've had them call me. Okay. And, it makes it easier on us counselors when we could say, oh, no. Our fire marshal gives this to you in the beginning. They're available to you throughout. And we have a log of everything that's said.
Absolutely.
That's compliance. And that's us actually dotting our I's and crossing our T's. So, but I recognize to ask you to do that, you need more people. And so I'm more than happy to dedicate my time to assisting you with grants like we've done with others. I'm sure that Halverson, all of us have written letters to support those systems. So if we can get grants, and we find out where they are, we'll just get together and we'll support you to get those.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thank you.
So keep us posted. I've already just emailed Elizabeth, asked her to look. And so we'll just stay on top of it.
Perfect.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Jared, mentioned the standards that you have to keep up with. How often do those standards change?
Well, our code cycle is every 3 years. And then the NFPA, again, they'll usually amend them on a, triannual basis, typically. And this one, it's been in the works. They've been about it for a while and they kept kind of pushing it out. A lot of departments have just said, we really can't manage that, but they finally said, we've given you enough time and
But it's your responsibility to keep up with those standards as they are updated.
Yes, sir.
So is it also the engineer or architect's responsibility when they're designing a building or renovating a building to know the standards?
Absolutely.
And to keep up with the standards professionally from their side as part of their services, as part of the billable time?
Yes, sir.
That they to the client. That's part of their.
That's why their stamp is so expensive. They get paid to know what codes each state has adopted, that they're certified and licensed to work in.
So the recurring theme that I've seen in my time as city manager is a lot of professionals that don't know the standards, that want you to do the standards for them. And then when they're not aware of the updates of the standards, they're not happy with you. But again, whether it's a fire plug being accessible within certain number of feet for a 2-story apartment, that the fire plug didn't exist. Whether it's stairways that are not emergency lit, doors at hotels that are chained, exits, couches sitting on top of heaters, all of those things. So what I've seen is you've done an outstanding job. And what I've asked is, particularly with vendors coming in with food trucks, would anybody else like to have Mr. Olive's job? And to a person, no one wants that job. So thank you for that. And just the education, I think, is key.
Absolutely. And I think that, if we have more personnel, that it makes the education a lot easier to disperse and disseminate that information. And then I think we have less issues in the long run. I always feel like I'm playing catch up, and that's never a good thing, because people are waiting on me. I'm never able to get ahead of the projects. So I think that if we were able to get more personnel and able to do that, it would lead to a lot of those concerns and questions that people are coming up.
Are the overhead sprinkler systems that are required in many instances cheap?
I wouldn't consider them cheap by any means. I don't think any of us in this room, but when you're developing those big projects, it's minuscule in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. And then they also get insurance incentives that people don't consider. I mean, the resellability of your property after you built it with sprinkler systems.
Your insurance rates at the time.
And anybody could go over there and buy that building. So if your business venture failed, well, you could at least recoup your money by selling something that could meet anybody's needs. Whereas if you neglected to do that, say we had instances where people put up fire partitions instead of a sprinkler system. So basically they divided their building in half to cut down the square footage. Well, one of our buildings that was heavily against Matt enforcing them to have that sprinkler system, they actually caught fire and burned up half their building. Now they have half a building that they're actually operating out of. They can't really sell the building because it was involved in a fire, down legitimately the other half. So, I mean, there's tons of instances where they try to get around that sprinkler system and it ends up costing more.
So that's been my experience thus far, is everybody wants to get around the sprinkler system. I know in K-5 school districts where you have large amounts of students congregating, you must have sprinkler systems in your building. I know that standard has changed over time, whether it's trampoline parks or whatever the case may be. Sprinklers are required and they're not cheap. But that should be the architect and or engineer drawing that into the client's drawings per the standard.
Yeah, and making them aware of it before they come to me, and I'm the bad guy that has to tell them, no, you need this.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, can I add one thing to that? To try to be really quick, I want to add one thing Jared said. One of the biggest things that you guys would have the ability to help him immensely is sprinkler systems are expensive. When you're building a new building or business, whatever you're going to do, a lot of times they'll look at the plans, well, but if I don't spend this here, I can add this to this and that, those sorts of things. Keep this quick, going back to his historical spill, the Station nightclub fire. They killed 100 people in the nightclub. That made national news because it killed 100 people because the building did not meet fire code. 3 nights before that fire in Kansas City, Missouri, there was a nightclub fire. The fire was started the exact same way as the Station nightclub fire. That building was completely sprinkled and one sprinkler put the fire out.
My next question, do they?
There was not a single injury reported. The Snazzy Pig building a few years ago, there was a light bulb that, bulb broke, melted the housing around the light. It dripped into some little low seat restaurant lobby area, low seats that were stacked up underneath that light, caught it on fire. These kinds of cushions and those low seat surfaces will burn like gasoline. One sprinkler head kicked on at 5 a.m. and put the fire out. By the time we got there, there was nothing but a little bit of water to squeegee out of the floor. Absolutely do work.
While I highly respect your viewpoint, so being a counselor, you have businesses that come to you that are mom and pop, and they're hit with these. Okay, so I recognize that your role is fire marshal and this, and if we want to support local people who want to build things, who can afford that, it would behoove us to work with the community to find programs, because I guarantee you there's programs, there's funding to help them get that stuff in there. If we as a government adhere to our compliance, enforce our codes and our compliance, but at the same time say, yes, we understand this is difficult for you. We have a little packet here where you can actually apply, be proactive so that they come to us. Don't just be, no, well, I'm sorry, you have to have this. And well, if you can't afford it, that's on you. Yeah. That attitude is what prevents growth. Okay, because I know several people in this community who were not prepared for it, who basically got hit with it, who just wanted to create something fun for the community. And all we have is a hard no. Well, that's where you end up dead like bomb. Okay, so granted, yes, please continue following compliance. But we as a council, we as an administration, we can come up with something to help them because there is statewide solutions.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've actually been in some of these organizations. They've presented to us, the National Fire Sprinkler Association. They have packets like what you're talking about.
We should have those.
They can show sprinkler insurance relief, tons of other grants opportunities that they can do. So they make these things very accessible to business owners. Unfortunately, at the stages like what you're talking about, we're called in last minute. Like I said, I'm always playing catch up on these projects. So I get called in when the people are ready to move in and start opening their doors.
So it's not necessarily for you, it's for our zoning and compliance, and those are conversations that we can have with them to actually, and
Yeah, when they apply for a permit.
right, or they should have a packet on that, those kind of things.
These are the requirements for your
We
business.
don't need to do it for them, but we can actually provide them with information because, you know, I'm sitting here, I'm gonna sit all day long and this is an overload. So just trying to set something up like that and find that information is actually very difficult. But we can help them and we can incentivize them to come here and to invest in our community.
And I guarantee if I had another couple of individuals that would help take some of the burden off me, that would be my number one priority, is that I would be trying to stop all of that issues at the forefront, provide all that information before they ever even knew that they needed to ask it.
Right.
You know?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, guys. Okay.
All right. Karen, you ready to follow that?
Yeah, I don't have a presentation. Sorry, Jared, that was excellent. Yeah, I didn't bring one. I really don't have anything to add. Business as usual for emergency management. Both my contractors were here last week, updating my documents, continued training and exercises geared towards air racing, just the usual stuff. So any questions, I'm happy to answer, but just business as usual.
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am. Animal Services, your turn.
We're finally fully staffed. Got 2 officers in training. I have 3 kennel workers in training. We're still working with the dog walking program. Hopefully that'll start next week. We're just waiting on the volunteer applications to be approved for that, so they can help out with videos, enrichment for the animals, and get some good videos and photos for rescue. We are working on trying to get a free spay neuter clinic. We are needing an area and supplies, if anybody knows. I mean, I think that would be good for the community to have a free spay and neuter clinic. So working on protocols for animal services, breeder's permit, want to get that. Do, has been sent to legal, just needs to be reviewed. And then the community cat program is a big one that we're trying to figure out.
Okay, so on your citations page, I know right now you're working on prosecuting those people that adopted dogs for $25 and didn't get them fixed. Is that where the 7 is, or how many of those are there?
Yeah, so I submitted so many, I can't. A lot of them missed because of signature, so I had to refile one. So I would say I probably have at least 15 files now. Refile. I'm trying not to overwhelm them. 55 a week rate.
And I know you had some questions, Tammy.
Oh, just about the citations.
Yeah, so mine are for the non-compliance derogation agreements. Officers, I think we had one, which we had to also refile that one. And then Jake had 2, which was also a refile.
We're going to be addressing that because we're working on that.
And then for running at large and running at large and
That's Jeff. Oh, did you see it? No. Yeah, okay, and we had the adoption event Saturday. How many got adopted then in the final?
So the other 23 got adopted. One of the puppies from Puppy Room, the one with the just made that point. Oh, and we got it.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That was good.
Yeah.
One thing we want to talk about is the kitty cat program. You guys are welcome to take one of these and pass them on. We're gonna do a report next month, right? That we're gonna vote on, because we gave it a year, the city council gave this program a year to try it out. So this graph, hopefully you can understand these graphs, but explains how it's working. You'll see the amount on the back, like in 2023, they euthanized over 621 cats. Yeah, 550 went to transfers, rescues like Sammy's. And then the community cat program, we only had like 2 months of that was Wild Blue. They did 38 cats. But the community cat program for this year, they've already fixed, they spay, neuter, and vaccinate. They've had a 556. And the costs are down there too. Calls helped. The Wild Blues helped. Problem we have right now is Best Friends isn't here anymore, and the city really has no more money to continue this. And we want to continue it. It's a good program, but we're going to have to address this next month. We've asked Best Friends to see if they can help some more. So we're going to have to reach out to organizations to donate it if we want to continue it, because if you go by the stats here, it seems to be working. They're not picking up as many cats. They're definitely not euthanizing as many cats.
Not seeing as many.
Yeah, we're not seeing as many cats around town. So I think it's a good program. I do think it's working, but at this point, the city's funding to continue it. So we're going to need organizations to step up, and we'll get more of a report on that next month when we do get the actual report. I mean, we can vote to continue it. We just won't have money to fund it. So yeah, we need to figure out what we can do on that. Any questions on that?
Do you think that's gonna be over?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think the council will vote. I can't speak for everyone, but I have a feeling it would vote to continue it, but without funding, we won't be able to afford it. So we need more grants. Call did use 2,500 of the Carol Petrie grant, which is the low-cost spay neuter program. to fix 208 cats in that 1 month. They've done an amazing job just fixing cats, but they're only here, like every 2 months and they're.
How much, I mean, can you give us an amount we need to raise? Because usually if we have how much do you think that we would need for a year from the community?
Well, right now, you can see on the chart here, South Springs is charging us 95 for a male, 120 for a female. And you picked up, the total for the year was 556 cats. So you'd probably need about that amount. The amount here, there's a total that we spent, $32,775. But that's not the full total because we did use $5,000, $2,500 from the Carol Petrie grant, $2,500 from Pioneer Bank. So there's actually a $37,000, almost $40,000.
Okay.
It's a lot of money.
I am talking to
Lowering the cost.
Shelly actually reached out to me. I just had this meeting. I'll give her a call.
Yeah.
Maybe there's less cats and we may have to spend less money.
Yeah, no, I think.
That's good. We're seeing less.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we together was, 20,000, let's at least say, well, all we've got is 10,000. So this is what we've got with what we can with that.
Yeah.
I mean, effort.
Shauna from Call, she wrote it's in the packet, right? Oh, no, it's not in the packet. It'll be presented next month.
Your thoughts on it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. We've seen that. So we do want to continue it. We do think it works, but we just need funding. Well, and that's on here too. It was $20,000. So it was, if you add the 5,000, it was $17,000 last euthanized, which, it's a big amount, but, monetarily, euthanizing them makes more sense, but humanely, it doesn't, so.
And then Wild Boots will be in town in October for the low cost baby clinic, and they also fix it for free and here.
Yeah, because they trap them and stuff. Okay, any questions for animal services? It's getting better. Just getting there slowly but surely, so. Okay, thank you, ladies. Fire, Matt Miller.
Jared did a great job on his presentation. I'll keep mine as short as possible, mostly because I don't want to jinx. Everything's going pretty good. We're gonna keep that way. We've got a couple that are kind of struggling academically in our recruit academy. But I'm hoping we'll be able to work them through that stuff. We've got, we're up to 4 promoted drivers. We've got 6 that are now upgraded, that are going through the streets process. But they're eligible to be upgraded to cover driver positions, so everything's going good.
Okay, I missed you, Toby, sorry, can you go out?
Oh, just everybody doing the daily duties, running calls, answering complaints, doing callbacks, doing routines. And tomorrow we'll be training on that new program. So that program is hopefully it's gonna work out really good for us. So we can take our iPad out in the field now, actually take a picture of violation and include it into the notice. So it's looking real good.
So you can
We're just
search,
in the training process right now, though.
but you can search for like past complaints.
Yes.
Is someone gonna go in and populate anything from the past, or is it just gonna start from?
It's gonna start from,
Okay.
it's a start from scratch.
Okay. All right, thank you. Dispatch.
So since we submitted this, we actually are down 9 people. We lost one of our recruits. Just wasn't working for her. So we're back to square one. I did send out 11 tests today. I've already had one person complete it and it was looking pretty good. So hopefully we'll get those in, look at the tests that we already have completed, be able to do interviews again. Terry attended the national director or the county directors conference last week, found out some things that we need to be doing that we hadn't been doing. And also the state's mandating some classes now that they also mandate for law enforcement. And we have to have everybody doing these classes by the end of the year. So working the schedules that we're working with the sheriff's department, the police department, because they actually have instructors. and they're willing to kind of work around schedules for us and get those done. Terry and I are splitting the training coordinator's job since we lost our training coordinator. Excuse me. She's still working graveyard 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. and I'm covering the day half plus keeping up with all of our duties. She'll be attending the National Leadership Conference next month and actually teaching it at, excuse me, been on a console all week. I'm losing my voice. We've been busy, lots of water calls, lots of water break calls recently. We're still getting the calls at 2 o'clock. So that's been a lot here lately. But pretty much business as usual for us as well.
Okay, any questions? Thank you, ma'am. And the RPD, I guess Chief had to leave. Huh?
Chief had to leave.
Yeah.
There are reports in the packet. If you have any questions on it, I may be able to answer them, or I'll get the answer to you.
Okay, so I'll open up the floor to public participation. Retake, oh yeah, she had to go to the PECD. Anybody have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
You can just, you're keeping track of what you're getting and I'm keeping track of what we have. So you have both of ours. What do you have as a total?
Since the beginning, I think we have at least, 10?
Is that all?
I believe
We have at least 10.
I think some of, like 2 of the ones we sent today, I saw 2 of them. Some of them are testing positive because of the titer, they've been vaccinated. So they're not, it's such a high level that they're positive for distemper, but they're positive for distemper because they've been vaccinated or they've gotten the boosters from the vaccination.
All of the ones that we're doing the PCR test that actually measures that.
Yeah, I know, I was reading that one of them on the bottom, there were 3 levels. The one that you sent was in the middle level, so I don't know, you would know better.
Yeah, that one they called me on today and said that the levels were high enough that it was not vaccination related.
Yeah, I do know they're cleaning like crazy and, I don't think it's an outbreak. I say that I'm not an expert, but it's not because 10 since April, right, Chantel?
Yeah, I'm going to the report now so I can pull up the first
Okay.
one. And then see what we have in there.
We are addressing, they're cleaning like crazy. So they're doing everything they need to do. And they're watching the dogs for illness.
So cleaning doesn't really have anything to do with that.
But when you got 100 dogs, you can't stop it from going airborne. The facility doesn't have the best air system.
So what would be your, Madam Chair?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
What would be your suggestion, Simon?
In the very beginning when it first started.
No, I'm talking about right now. If we got food that tested positive today, what's your suggestion?
Why are you putting this on me?
Well, I'm asking because we get a lot of questions about, we can't do this. We bring the state vet into our facility, spends the morning with the counselors and everything, and man, we're doing everything great. We make whatever suggestions they make, but then the next day we bring in another dog that we test, we vaccinate, we test, and it pops hot. We can't keep closing down our facility and not use the. I've been trying for 20 years to find out, and me and Dr. Albers, he's been trying longer than I have, to figure out how to meet everybody's needs, and we can't. I've come to that realization that we can't close the facility down. We cannot not pick up animals. We cannot not euthanize. And if the rescues can't take them, then we're to the point of where we have no other option but to euthanize. And when we euthanize, we get slaughtered on social media for doing our jobs. When we're just asking, give us a legitimate option or an option that we can do, a solution that we can do. That's all I want. I want answers. I want to help them.
But I'm talking about in the very beginning because it's spreading more now. And you can't say that it's not an outbreak because you're not testing it.
Well, no, I'm not calling an outbreak. The state vet called it not an outbreak. It wasn't us. It was the state vet.
She said that they weren't comfortable saying that it was an outbreak because the dogs weren't being tested.
That's not what she told us, but one of the biggest changes we've made there to help prevent this is that one area where they were holding the court hold of the bite dogs. So those 10 cages are now open just for quarantine. The problem is, it's only 10 cages. So in a week, that'll fill up. So now they can't hold a dog for 10 days.
It's an average of 2 days right now if they're being.
Yeah, so, that's not their fault. Just, what do you want them to do? They have to pick up the dogs. So they've been quarantined for 2 days. Maybe they have to move them over now.
Well, all I know is that our expert, with the University of Florida is telling us that we shouldn't be pulling dogs from there right now.
And I think you've tried to call her too, haven't you? Yeah. Yeah. And
we had a meeting set up with her and she went with somebody else.
Yeah, and then the one from Florida said she wouldn't meet with me because we went with somebody else.
Yes.
I'm confused. So you're frustrated because you're pulling dogs from our shelter that have distemper that you're actually putting out. Here's a lot of my problem with even being, and I hate to sound crass, but at the same time, I just had to make a decision that would change the mindset that would lead to a whole bunch of dogs just being annihilated. So what's the difference in distemper taking them out and a regular society who cannot actually follow compliance or laws? I mean, basically, I get that you want us to create this, but at the same time, you're asking me to put laws in place that will kill a whole bunch of them. So what's the damn difference? I mean, that's I
do want to point out,
it makes me sick, all of it.
the new ordinance too does include that they are required to get distemper vaccinations now too. But that, again, that all depends on the people. So it's just another citation they can issue. But because they're picking up dogs with distemper, and that's, but they don't know they have distemper. When they pick them up, they may sit perfectly fine.
Right. Animal Services is supposed to protect the community, and that's not happening right now. Because they're sending it out into the community. So I don't know what the answer is. I don't.
Can I ask a question? Yes. So whenever the first
name and phone number, name and address, sorry.
Edith Martinez, I live on 906. So when the first dog with distemper, what action was taken? I know they were picked up from Hagerman, right?
Yeah, I think was the first one from Hagerman?
Out in the county, yeah.
And what action was taken once you knew that? Now we have that.
All we can do is just inform the county officers that they get it from the county.
So that's probably when you would have to shut down, euthanize any animal that was.
Oh, we shut down and they euthanized the whole road.
Yeah,
because they were trying to clean that out and then start monitoring the dogs, because they vaccinate dogs on intake against it. The problem is, and I talked to the state vet, and I actually talked to the vet that does all the calls, spay and neuters. This isn't the Roswell problem, this is a statewide problem, and it's the summer, it's hot, you're gonna have distemper. There's no way around it. I don't know, you know better, Dr. Alpers. I mean, it's just.
Well, yeah, that adds to the stress, which makes them more susceptible to a whole load of different diseases. But distemper is the one that we're familiar with because we live with it all the time. But the summer presents unique things. When our temperature gets that hot, it just changes things.
And it's just one of those diseases that if people don't get their dogs vaccinated, which they obviously don't, then they're left holding the bag because they're picking them up and they don't know it, and then and the way the facility is designed, it just goes from dog to dog. Like you said, it's airborne. So they may see a dog that's perfectly happy and healthy. She picks it up. We can't afford the testing. What are they? The PCR one's like $400 a test.
$220 is.
I can't explain to my constituents how I'm spending $220 for a dog. It's probably going to be put down in 14 to 30 days. And we don't have the money for that. And
if you microchip these dogs and you check these dogs when they come in, if there's no microchip, he hadn't been vaccinated.
What's the percentage of dogs you pick up are microchipped?
It's very rare.
Of course, it's very low.
Because
They take them and they throw them outside and let them fend for themselves. But I think that's one of the quick checks you can do is check, see if they got a microchip. And if they don't, you assume the worst, that it is in fact.
they do vaccinate when they come in, but that's the first thing they do when they find a dog running large. They microchip it, and their goal is to get that dog home. So if that dog has a microchip and an address associated, they take the dog home. They don't take it to the animal control. They do their best to give it to the owner without bringing it into the facility.
But it depends upon whether the age of this animal when it was vaccinated, and if there have been additional vaccinations given. It's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
And a vaccine is not that simple because it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks to really get immunity to start to respond.
Sick vaccine is just.
Yeah, so.
So many variables in it that
They're a living, breathing thing. And so they're just like us. There are lots of variables and you've got to think about those and decide what you can do with them.
I do believe that's why when we had the meeting with we had the largest contingent of vets that we've ever had here one day at lunch.
Oh my.
And filled up this whole table and I went in the room and I've got pretty much a different response from every one of them about how to handle this because there's too many variables. There's no simple answer.
Well, it's a mindset. The mindset is certainly a big factor in it because you don't allow them to get bad. You do preventive medicine. It's like anything we do, prevention is better than cure. So it's hard. It's not easy to change a mindset that's been in existence for 100 years.
Generations.
It's not easy to change that. Not easy to see the value of having a fenced yard or a big pen when they haven't had that or been exposed to that for the last 100 years.
Also, animal services is a government institution. Okay, it's not a community. I mean, I know.
Not a shelter.
I know that we would like it to be beautiful and sunshiny and rosy, but it's a government institution. And it's because we're dealing with a problem of people and we're taking in animals. I mean, the reality is sickening.
Well, and if I could, Madam Chair. Abby, is your facility full?
Right now, yes.
Our facility full?
Yes.
Sam, is your facility full? Always.
Believe me, I get that. But, Juliana said earlier that we were having a hard time keeping up with the amount of dogs that come in. And that's not the issue. The issue is that our rescues are full pharmacy disease.
But we're not the only ones that are dealing with this. I mean,
Well, in our meeting that day, Dr. Walker had one in Carlsbad, confirmed case in Carlsbad.
Oh, I'm not saying that it's, but, I'm saying back in 2016, the state stepped in and got a building and quarantine, and it wasn't very long before we didn't see distemper. I haven't seen distemper in the shelter ever since it ended in 2016 until now. That's the first time I've seen it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we don't have that building anymore. I mean, that wasn't an option for us this time.
Yeah, well, what it boils down to is that the city doesn't have the resources or the money and that kind of thing to do all those things, so it just is what it is.
And I just want to say, I appreciate everything you do, because I know you do.
I do too.
Dogs. But the ladies are doing the best they can with the resources they have. I mean, you go in there now, it's the cleanest I've ever seen it. The smell isn't horrible or anything. I mean, it smells like a dog, but not like, before you would get overwhelmed. So I invite you or anyone to go check it out. They've been doing a really good job. Yeah. So what do you think? Is it improved a lot?
But yeah,
it smells noticeably.
Yeah. Yes. So, I mean, we're doing the best we can with the resources we have. We can't afford to test every dog. So, and she's doing her best. If she sees a sickly one, they move it out. But, like you said, it's airborne, so. But I don't think we have I say we don't have an outbreak because that's not that many dogs since April. An outbreak, we'd see a lot more, I think.
Well, I know the state that said that they look at it on the state level. When they start seeing it in wildlife, is when they'll start considering the outbreak verbiage, if I understood her correctly. And they're not seeing it in wildlife. So that's kind of how they judge it, based on my understanding of our discussion that day.
Yeah.
That's separated into something. So to enforce, I know you have said you have spoken to the judge in July, right? And so how's that going? Right, well,
We can't tell a judge how to do his job.
Right.
But I did discuss with him. I hope he's going to see an uptick if they start citing more. And to make people accountable. Abby and I talked to him last night because he happened to be at the restaurant. We may not agree on everything, but I'm hoping he'll step up. And I said, with the increase of fines, but again, that's going to take 3 months. But if they can't afford it, I want them to do community service at the facility so they see the problem themselves firsthand. So we'll see keeping track of it, we'll be able to find where the issue lies. Because we'll be able to start tracking where they get, how many citations they issue, then how many the attorneys send to, and then if there's no prosecutions, then we'll find out. But I don't think that will be the case. So.
Yes, numbers.
Yeah, no, not yet. We just started, yeah.
I think a lot of the problem is the tickets are.
Name and address.
So I'm gonna TNS. I think a lot of the issue is the citations just aren't being given.
Yeah.
You're not gonna see an increase on.
There's no accountability.
Yeah, exactly. There's no accountability. Somebody mentioned euthanasia being like, oh, well, it's not going to hurt them if they're just thrown out on the side all the time anyway. They're already being neglected. It doesn't hurt their feelings. They should take their dog away and kill them. The part that hurts them is the hurting part.
Yeah. That's why, like I said,
you get money taken out.
we started this, and so we'll be addressing that too. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, like us in code enforcement department, we get our habitual offenders. Some of them already know the system. File a criminal complaint on them, goes to court, they plead guilty, they pay their fee, and there isn't a court cost anymore. $29 court cost is out. So all they pay is their fee, guilty verdict, done. That's it. Then we have to start over again.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people think we don't cite people and stuff, but we do. My guys file a bunch of criminal complaints every single day.
We include.
Sure, you could. Their officers do too. It's and also judge can get these people to, okay, you're gonna do 20 hours of community service. Okay, he gave that to them. They don't show up. He can impose something on them and they still won't do it. So what do you do?
That's why I'm hoping of reporting now. We'll be able to track that and say, well,
We used to have 2 vans of community service people every day. We're lucky we get 1 person a day now. It's a little bit of both. Judge can impose it, you pay your fine and you're done. You go to jail and you're done.
Yeah.
Then you got to start over. Like I said, the community, you give the community service. And if they don't show up, then they go to jail and then what?
So I want to add the stone address. We've been dealing with that.
Yeah.
That's a good we ended up with his stuff are surrendered dogs are running loose, so we picked up 6 dogs from there. There's still dogs out there. And then I believe he got probation. So, I mean, there is a little bit getting done. I did tell him I wasn't, he does have dogs that he's trying to keep. So I think they're working on that because we're just gonna end up back in the same situation if he tries to keep dogs.
Competitive.
That same gym, man. Katie, when she was a court, I was like, I think. That was how many years ago? About 3.
2 or 3.
So it's always the same people.
Yeah. See, and that's where we can't tell the judge what to do, but
It's hard.
yeah. Well, and I feel like for you, it's same with the PD, you know, they go arrest someone, they're out in the street. Like
The tracking's a great start.
Yeah, the tracking's a good start, so we can start narrowing down where we see the problem. Okay, do you have anything else, Amy? Anyone else, anything? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I adjourn this meeting. This ordinance.
Good to see you, good as always.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. well, it's- You're not gonna wait, you're not gonna wait. Yep. Okay. That's mild. That's right. You guys say, enough.
Good. Not at all. It's good to see you.
You too.